Hello, guys, and welcome to this session at the Diabetic Desk. My name is Charity Ononi, and I'll be taking you through this presentation on food, family, and type 1 diabetes, building support around the plate. So, this conversation is for family, caregivers, and community in general. I want us together to explore the role of food in supporting people with type 1 diabetes. We're going to look at what type 1 is and the role nutrition plays in all this. So stay tuned. Leave your questions in the chat box. This is a recorded session. So I'll respond to it in real time as we continue to listen to this presentation. I hope you enjoy it. If you're a caregiver taking care of a type 1, leave it in the chat box. If you're healthcare, have you ever taken care of a type 1 diabetes? Leave it in the chat box. If you're just a curious soul, leave it in the chat box where you're watching, listening from, your name for data collection purposes. So feel free to engage with me and let's enjoy this session. So about me, my name is Charity. Like I said, I have a background in nutrition with a 3-year experience. I'm currently about to finish my postgraduate studies, and my topic area of interest that I've written my thesis on is type 2 diabetes. So I love diabetes. I'm very passionate, and this came about during my experience in one diabetic clinic during my internship, where I just found myself gravitating towards diabetes management. And this passion led me to just simplify science, technical terms into everyday guidance for you guys so that you can be able to understand and you can be able to just help create awareness around diabetes and help people living with diabetes feel seen, feel supported, and just everything to do with diabetes. I'm very passionate about it. And the goal of this session is to bridge the gap between science and real life family experience, because for me, I feel like support is the number one, apart from nutrition, medication, and all the lifestyle changes. Support is an essential component that holds those key areas together, because without support, the people will not feel like they are being heard. So I hope you guys will be able to be blessed and you feel like you enjoyed this session. Please share, let people come in and learn about type 1 diabetes. So why is this topic important? Type 1 is a lifelong condition, and it requires daily management, like you're going to see in the next slide. So nutrition decision happen in real life and often happen in the family table. Like when you eat together as a family, most of the decision about food happens on the table. When someone doesn't like how the food is prepared, they're going to say. If someone likes it, they're going to say. So family plays a role in shaping habits and overall support to anyone living with type 1 diabetes or any other diabetes or any other condition. If you agree with me, leave it in the chat box. So let's talk. So sometimes misinformation and stigma can add an extra burden. It can really take a toll on people. So it's very, very important to curb, as a healthcare, to curb that misinformation, to curb that stigma, so that we can ease the burden when it comes to the caregivers taking care of people living with type 1 diabetes. So supportive environment make living with diabetes less overwhelming. If during my data collection period, I did a survey. I was doing a knowledge attitude practice kind of study. And from the attitude, you could see most people who were supported translated to them managing the blood glucose well, compared to those people who say they didn't feel supported. Because if you don't feel supported, and management, if you've seen, takes a whole village, from the person making the food to making sure the person manages their blood glucose level, to make sure all that is needed is catered for. So you can imagine, if one person is doing all that and they don't feel supported, it's going to put a lot of challenges and burden on the management of type 1 diabetes. So what is type 1 diabetes? You might ask yourself, why am I talking about type 1 diabetes? Yes, we have currently 5 types of diabetes. I think I will do a session breaking each and of them because my specialization is type 2, but I'm still curious because I've come across people living with type 1. I've come across people living with gestational diabetes, and the recently discovered one is type 5 that involves long-term malnutrition. So we're going to also look at that. But type 1 is an autoimmune condition where the body destroys insulin producing cells. Look on the diagram on your screen. This is a healthy pancreas. The brain signals the beta cells. Insulin is produced. The blood sugar levels in the blood are taken to the cells for energy usage. But on the other side, we have someone who is diabetic with type 1. Yeah. So the insulin is destroyed. Yeah, so the beta cells and the insulin produced are destroyed. So it means there's no insulin that is secreted, and the blood sugars remain high in the blood. There's no uptake by the cells. That's why you'll find that one of the major signs and symptoms of diabetes type 1 is unintentional weight loss. So people living with type 1 diabetes require insulin therapy. This means day in, day out, as long as they are living, they will be on insulin because the body is not able to produce the insulin, and the insulin that is produced is destroyed by the immune system. So I want you guys to understand that it's very, very different from type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is usually lifestyle related, and we'll talk about the differences in the next slide. It mostly affects children, teenagers, because if you're diagnosed as a child, you're going to go with it teenagehood, young adulthood, until the day the Lord calls you. So, and also some adults above 21 can also sometimes get type 1 diabetes. And with type 1 diabetes, the causes are not really definite. We just know the body is destroying the insulin producing cells, those are the beta cells, but we don't know why. So we're going to look at the difference. I've tried to simplify it to the best of my ability so that anyone who is not a healthcare professional and they're very interested in knowing diabetes are able to understand. So insulin is the main hormone. Insulin alongside glucagon are the main hormones that aid in the proper control of blood glucose level, but insulin plays a major role. So with type 1, the body makes no insulin because the beta cells are destroyed. With type 2, body resists insulin. That's why there's a case of insulin resistance that I usually talk about on my Friday series of insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity. And the little insulin that is really there is not functioning properly. So you'll find that there's elevated blood sugar levels because the body is not able to take up the excess glucose in the blood. So with type 1, the body makes no insulin. With type 2, the body makes insulin, but the body resists it, so it's not doing its work. So there's still an elevated blood sugar level. Onset usually start in childhood, most of the time also young adulthood, and it's most common in adults and it's linked with lifestyle. That's why with type 2, I'm very curious because type 2 is something that if you look at your lifestyle, it's preventable. Yeah. Yeah, you are watching me or listening to me. It's about lifestyle choices. Yeah. Causes with type 1, it's an autoimmune destruction of the beta cells that produces the insulin. With diabetes, it's a combination of your lifestyle, how you live, your genetics, your age. So these are the modifiable risk factors and the non-modifiable risk factors. So with the modifiable risk factors, those are nutrition, physical activity, sleep quality, mental health, relationship, everything that you can change as a person. Yeah, that's why we tell you guys earlier on, catch it, change your lifestyle and lead it for the better. And then we have the non-modifier. Those are the age, family history, genetics. Those are things you cannot change. But alongside the modifiable risk factors, you are able to lead a healthy lifestyle. Management requires insulin therapy, long life, and daily monitoring because there's no insulin. This means the person has to be really diligent when it comes to monitoring. And then type 2 diabetes management include lifestyle changes, medication, and sometimes insulin if there's cases of complications that will put the management at PAM, and then we're going to look at the role. Type 1 supports blood glucose stability and growth, because remember, it affects children and teenagers and young adults. Those are people are still growing and developing. So if nutrition is not sufficient, you'll find that there's weight loss, there's undernutrition, underdevelopment, and poor quality of life. And then when it comes to type 2, and role of nutrition is to help improve insulin sensitivity. That's why on that series, I really highly recommend working towards insulin sensitivity and watching your weight, because overweight, obesity is a risk factor when it comes to insulin resistant, prediabetes, and most of the time type 2 diabetes development. I hope you've understood each other there. We'll talk more about the different types of diabetes in a different segment, because I know people confuse type 1 and type 2. So why does nutrition matter in type 1? Food directly affect our blood glucose level because they don't have insulin. So it means whatever they eat is going to be in the blood. So if they eat added refined sugars, it's going to go directly because it's easily absorbed and it's going to spike their sugar. If they eat poorly, it's going to have a sugar crash because there's nothing to aid and control the blood sugar level. So balanced meals most of the time equals better glucose control or blood sugar control. We're going to look at carbohydrate awareness in the next slide. So we're going to understand the different macronutrients that play a role in management of blood sugar level. Regular eating patterns reduces spikes and lows. So for me, I usually encourage my clients, my patients to make sure they eat at regular times. I know it can be hard, especially if you're in school or if you're a kid running around playing, or if you're an adult, you're working. Sometimes it can be hard to maintain regular eating patterns, but regular eating patterns, they even on a healthy, normal person, reduces the sugar spikes and the sugar lows. When nutrition supports overall health, not just the blood sugar, yes, it aids is the number one management, yes, I can say that, but it also supports the overall health, especially for the developing children with type 1 diabetes, and also teenagers, because they're changing, they're getting different eating habits and all that. Yeah. So understanding carbohydrates. So what is carbohydrate? This is energy giving foods. These are the main nutrients, macro. They're needed in huge amounts. And most of the time they're the first food group to be broken down. So they're going to raise the blood sugar. That's why it's the number one culprit. Everything people blame it on carbohydrates. It's mostly found in bread, mkate, mchele, pasta, fruits, maziwa, sweets, and it's always labeled as bad. I'm air quoting because we usually vilify carbohydrates so much. And sometimes it's the quality, the quantity, and the portion sizes we're eating that really matters. People don't look at that, they just vilify carbohydrates. And I usually tell you guys, each and every food group has its own function in the body. The trick is to pair your protein, fiber with also healthy fats to ensure there is low sugar rising. It helps, I always call them speed governors. You know, in cars, when you're going so fast, the speed governor kicks in and then it slows the speed of the car. So the proteins, healthy fats, veggies usually play like the role of a speed governor to the carbohydrate. So when you're eating, it's going to slow down how well the carbs are broken and absorbed in the blood sugar, in the blood, I mean. So there will be no spikes and crashes. Even for you as a healthy person, to avoid the sugar spikes and crashes I usually talk about, please ensure your plate has a complex carb, has a lean protein, has a healthy fat, and has veggies, and you include a fruit because we still need the macronutrients, those are vitamins and minerals. Those are needed in trace amounts in the body, but they're still very important. We're going to look in another session carbohydrate counting, because that is a whole different topic that will take a while and I don't want this session to be long. So carbohydrate counting guides the insulin doses. Yeah, because when the person is discharged with the insulin, normally passed through via a nutritionist to be able to be educated on when to take the food and the timing of the insulin. Because if there's no education and there's no proper education or teachings given, the person might inject the insulin and they have not eaten. So where is the insulin going to do? It's going to crash because there's nothing to control. So it's very, very important to look at those. That's why I say management of diabetes is individualized and it's real and active. You have to be active. Like I remember when I was still working in the hospital, I used to be so active with people living with diabetes until walikuwa wananiambia, "Unaambia daktari wa chakula ni mkali." Nikimwambia tu nimekosa, I used to follow up them. I used to have a WhatsApp group if some of them were comfortable to join, but those who were not, I still had them on a broadcast. I used to check up on them because it's very, very important to ensure they know there's someone watching because hey, teenagers, especially type 1, they can be very, very difficult, but they're actually very nice. So it's very, very important for you to be vigilant. If you're a nutritionist, dietitian, or a healthcare professional watching this, to be very careful when it comes to blood monitoring, insulin dosage, and the type and the amount of carbohydrates they are eating, especially even in the inpatient management. So the role of protein and fats, proteins are bodybuilding foods and fats are energy giving foods too. And fats are actually at a higher caloric. That's why we don't really recommend them in huge amounts. But for me, I usually encourage people to eat healthy fats. Those are found in avocado, nuts. We're also going to look at, there's a debate about seed oils and the beef tallow. These are huge debate. I usually love reading them. A lot of researches are being done on the beef tallows and the negative effects of seed oil. So I will make up a presentation and talk about those two. So protein helps keep the blood sugar steady. Protein is the second food group to be broken down, and then fats. So when you don't eat carbohydrates, protein and fats are the next to be broken down. That's why there's a huge trend when it comes to ketogenic diet. I'll talk about that later, and also intermittent fasting and the role they play in most of these metabolic syndromes. Yeah. So include them on your plate to balance them. Like I said, these are speed governors. Avoid excess saturated fats. Those are trans fats too. I forgot to add there. Trans fats are found in most of these processed fried foods. Um, I always tell them to limit because with fries there's no moderation. No one can lie to me. There's moderation. I know, yeah, because once you start, sometimes stopping is so hard. So I want you to incorporate those for variety purposes. Yeah, you can see on my side I've given you examples. When you go to the market, look at those, buy them, incorporate them into the diet of the person you're managing. And also, before I go any further, ensure you involve your nutritionist and dietitian to help you come up with something that will balance this. Yeah, I know some of you will go to ChatGPT and type, and there was a case where a man was hospitalized for following ChatGPT diet. So be cautious. So we're going to look at the plate method. This is my plate. I don't know if I should bring my plate here so I can show you. This is the plate I use. And I usually tell people when you want to eat a healthy food, follow someone's diabetic diet. I know there's nothing like diabetic diet, but someone who has diabetes and the way they eat, follow what they do. That is the most healthiest diet you'll ever have. Because half of their plate is vegetables, yeah. And then another portion, now half of the other remaining portion is taken by the protein and the carbohydrate. Incorporate a fruit and water. Water is a low calorie drink. I know most of us we take teas and everything with added sugar, so you also have to be cautious when it comes to that. Always want this method to be very well explained by the nutritionist. So make sure if your child has diabetes or you're managing someone with diabetes, please visit the nearest facility or come to me. I'm available. My number is pasted everywhere. You can reach out and we can talk more about how to help you manage. Because for me, when I take you under my wing, I follow you to the end. Even up to now, I stopped working in the clinical setting for a while, but I still have clients from about 2 years ago still reaching out and asking me, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Because I lead with empathy, and I make sure when I follow up something, I do it till the end. So flexible, family friendly, and easy to apply. That is why a nutritionist has to be there to come up with a meal plan or a menu plan for your family so that you can do it well. So why does family meal time? That's why you're encouraged to have family meals. I know these days that you continue getting older with busy schedule, find that you're not really consistently eating as a family, but shared meals encourage consistency because your kids will be observing what you're doing, and then it will build a positive food environment and a positive relationship with the food. Mealtime becomes like a connection time. You're talking, you're asking, and the kids they talk, they tell you what they ate. So from there, you'll be able to know if the child ate something that they're not supposed to eat. So food is more than nutrition; it's emotional care. I have a series also on my YouTube channel where I'm trying to introduce the concept of food as a self care and equating it to the mental health. So our parents' role, you as a caregiver, not necessarily, you can be a caregiver or a parent, make sure you provide balance at home. Yeah, I know it can be hard, but yes, support without policing. I know it's very difficult to do that, especially if you have a kid who is living with type 1. You'll want to know what they're doing, what they're eating, where, and all that. So it can be quite difficult. So encourage healthy habits for the whole family. Um, I also just want everyone, because for me, when a child is bringing the mother who has diabetes and I'm counseling, I sit them down. I'm like, wewe wakati mimi sina hiyo, ati mwambie no. Sit down and listen, because if you foster healthy habits, you're going to help support the person living with diabetes. If a child sees you eating healthy, they're going to eat healthy. If a child sees you eating unhealthy, they're going to eat unhealthy. So we're going to look at teaching your kids fullness and hunger cues. These are preteens, 5 to 10 or 12, where those kids can show you shaggy. So you really have to be um, always teaching, because they're very curious. They're always asking. So teach them how to know I'm full, teach them to know I'm hungry, I'm eating, and what to eat. And also, you as a caregiver, as a parent, you should avoid labeling food as bad. Like, hii chakula ni mbaya, sijui. You're creating a relationship with food, and you're showing a negative side of it. And as human beings, you're always drawn to the negative side of things. We don't really go to the positive. I don't know why. Yeah. So siblings and support. This applies when you have one child who has type 1 and the rest do not have. So you have to involve them during meal times. Explain to them why nani anadungwa shindano at this time, so that you can prevent isolation to the child who is living with type 1 diabetes. Normalize healthy eating. Make it like something that is not different, like it's something normal in your home. Teach them kindness, teach them understanding. Nani akisikia hivi, you tell them, and kids are very resilient. When you tell them something, they will take it to heart and they will come and report and tell you. Yeah, this reduces stigma within the home, because if the child living with diabetes feel like they're being stigmatized, they're not going to really adhere to what you say, and they're going to give you a hard time. So when you've taught them, you've encouraged them, and they know sometimes Nani is not up to play, she's not feeling well, they're very supportive, they sit with their siblings. I always just love when I see kids supporting each other. Yeah. We're going to look at a case story. For me, I usually tell stories. Um, I met this couple. Back then, I was still working. Um, they came into the hospital and they reported that one of their child was losing weight. Wengine wanakula, hata yeye akikula, she's still losing weight, has a fruity breath, and pee that smells like glucose. So further tests were done, and true, when I was chatting the weight, the child was losing weight and the child looked underweight. So further tests were done, and the child was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So the parents were shocked. They were like, sisi kwetu hakuna mtu akona diabetes. Why is our child having diabetes? So it was quite hard for them to accept, and the journey of them coming to terms, making the necessary changes. It took us almost 3 months for them to actually stabilize. Um, the first few weeks were quite difficult. I used to get phone calls even at night on mtoto sijui nini. The child was readmitted with DKA, that is diabetes ketoacidosis. So with further coaching and just support, the family started now improving and learning more about what diabetes is, and just knowing that it gets better. So within 4 months, the lifestyle was changing one step at a time. They were trying to eat as healthy as possible, including the child, explaining to the siblings, coming for checkups and all that. And you could see when the child was admitted, they went home, came back. As they were coming for checkups, that child had improved. Like you could see there was energy. The child was playing, the child was happy, and wasn't feeling like left out. So it was quite good. I love providing these anonymous stories that real life people experience, and you can see with the support of the family and us as healthcare professionals, the family was able to just slowly change, because with habit change, and this is something I noticed with my type 2 patients. Hey, those people, like, they're adults, so changing their they're set in their ways. Like, I'm not going to change how I'm eating because you're telling me. I'm going to beat this diabetes. I'm going to go to all these lengths not to just change my lifestyle. So it becomes quite a burden to manage. But I'm glad this family, they did well. By the time I left, they were doing quite well. So I can't complain. Yeah. So snack tips. For me, I usually pair my snacks carbs with either protein or healthy fats. I love peanut butter. If you're with me, I love peanut butter. In my porridge, there's always peanut butter. On my bread, there's peanut butter. Sometimes when I have a banana or an apple, I have peanut butter. I love peanut butter, and I love also avocado. So if it's not peanut butter, it's avocado. So yeah, choose whole grain options. Um, Advise your child, encourage them, because they will ask, mami mbona sikunywi soda ama juice, na hao wanakula juice. So advise them water is the best. Even in the colder season, ensure they take water. If they are school going kids, ensure you plan for snacks. If you're a type 1 diabetic patient, above 21, working, going to campus, whatever, make sure you pack your snacks or pack your lunch, so that you don't have long stretches where you don't eat, so that your sugar does not crash. Keep healthy, ready to eat option in your bag. Like, I was going through TikTok and I came across a girl who was living with type 1 diabetes, and she was saying, you know what, type 1 diabetes is funny because they tell you to avoid sugary things, but when your blood glucose is low, they tell you to eat sweets. So that really made me follow her, and I really love her bravery and courage to share her journey living with type 1. And I feel like along the way, it encourages someone to know that it gets easier. Sometimes it can be bad, but with proper support, you're okay. So we're going to look at school menu, because most of the type 1 diabetes are school going children or adolescent in high school, or young adults in campus. So in school, especially feeding programs in Kenya are high in carbs. Remember? Yes. I'm not going to go there. That is policy issues that we'll talk about later. And sometimes it's inconsistent in quality. That one yote tunakubaliana. Leave it in the chat box. Encourage patients to review school menus with the staff. You know your child has diabetes, so you go and explain to them. If it's not possible, pack lunch for them, pack snacks for them, fill in the gap, yeah? Teach your children how to choose wisely from what is offered. I know huku Nairobi menus za shule ukiziangalia you're like, siku hizi vitu zimebadilika. Partner with teachers. I know most schools have nurses. Partner with the nurses, make sure you do adequate follow-up so that they know time for blood glucose monitoring. When there crashes or spikes, they know what to do. So I know most schools have school nurses who can be able to help you with that. But you as a caregiver, please be proactive. You're going to look at eating out as a family. Of course, you cannot not eat out because someone has diabetes or is living with diabetes. So this is coupled with celebration. I think there's a slide about celebration. I'm not going to touch on it. I'm just going to sum them up. Please don't skip meals. If you're going out, I know there are diabetic friendly restaurants that offer those. You can check them out, see what they have to offer, order a large piece, share as family so that you can reduce the portion sizes, encourage them to drink more water, estimate the portions from the plate I've shown you because you cannot be walking with that plate everywhere. So make the meal times less stress. Balance the food, practice mindful eating. Don't let the child just binge on treats. Portion control is very key. Remember, they're still living with type 1 diabetes. Normalize going out, normalize celebration without feeling guilty or making everyone around feel guilty. Because I remember also part of my data, they were saying diabetes was interfering with their social life because you have to look at what you're eating, you have to do this, you have to do this, and sometimes it can make you not want to actually go out and then you feel isolated from people. That's why I encourage you to ensure they join support groups because support groups has people who are experiencing the same thing and they'll be able to talk and help each other. So we're going to look at grocery shopping as a family. I love when I see mothers, fathers going with their kids to shopping. I know it's easier said than done because wakiona vitu wanapenda na wakatalii, it can be quite difficult. But I feel like when you involve them and teach them, like anataka hiyo namwambia hapana, chukua hii, this is nice, this has this, this has this, do this, and they'll be able to learn so that but I always see some kids like they eat healthy because they see their parents eating healthy. They see their parents going to pick up a snack that is healthy. They see their parents making the snacks for them, packing for them. Skip the list. Avoid impulse buying. Sometimes if you don't want to buy something, don't buy it. And if it's not on the list, because I know most supermarket they work on our psychology, wanaweka vitu zenye they're very catchy hapo mbele so that mtoto anakatalia and then anaanza kulia. So you have to really be consistent, stand and be firm when you're establishing these healthy habits, but still be empathetic about them. So we've already looked at that. So everyday challenges, these are things that you face, or I know most of you face. So this is picky eating, because 5 to 12 preteens, oh, those kids, they know what they want. You might prepare this and they don't want it. So it's very, very important to also include them during meal times. When you're making the meal, when you're picking up something to eat, ask them what they want to eat and make it so that it will reduce picky eating and not enforcing what you want them to eat. When you enforce them, they'll become picky and they will not want to eat. Handling busy schedule, maybe you're a caregiver or you're working and you have type 1 diabetes, you end up skipping meals and you know diabetes with skipping meals doesn't do well, or you're a caregiver, you have to delegate the work of taking care of the child and it's quite hard because you have to really educate and explain a lot. Navigating cravings and temptation, especially for teenagers and campus going type 1s. You're going to the mall with everyone, you see this food, you eat, you pick. So it can be quite a tempting time. Family disagreement about food choices. Sometimes you might want to support, but they're like, you know what? I mean, nataka tu kukula what I want to eat. I don't have it. So navigating those disagreements is quite challenging. And then coping up with stress and emotional eating, because stress and emotional eating, same WhatsApp group. I also talk about this in my series, and I think this is the next thing I'm going to talk about, emotional eating. So be on the lookout on my YouTube channel. I will share how to navigate emotional eating using nutrition and just how to safeguard your mental health. So emotional support during meal times. For me, WHO encourages responsive feeding. Feeding should not be a battlefield. Foster a positive language about health. Don't make it like a bad thing. Foster a positive relationship with food. Avoid making them feel like it's wrong to do something and then they feel guilty about food, perpetuating the negative relationship with food, and especially for teenagers and campus going type ones can really lead to eating disorder. Creating safe space for children, teens to talk about real life issues, continue offering emotional support, but it's very, very important as you offer the nutrition bit. Yeah. So this area I'm going to dwell on it a little bit. Supporting teenagers and young adults. Remember, these are people who are developing into now they're young adults. Yeah. So you have to really look at their food choices because you can't force them, you can't control them. Your role is just to guide them as a caregiver, as a healthcare professional, and building trust so that they can talk to you when there's something. Talk to them about peer pressure because someone in campus they might want to lead a certain way, live a certain way, but the condition they have will not allow them do that. They want to constantly eat out, preparing their food. I remember I used to have a patient who was having really a hard time preparing food because they were on the road all the time. So finding a place, just teaching them how to eat out, how to portion, and how to just estimate these things while on the road. Oh, it was quite challenging, but I enjoyed it. Supporting their mental health alongside nutrition. Like I said, those two go hand in hand. And also celebrating them when they make small wins. I used to love when they're telling me, this week by day I've not had any sugar spikes or crashes. Okay, zimekuwa but si sana. And you follow up and they're sending you pictures like, okay, I bought this. Is this okay? I used to love interacting with. Oh, it makes me miss it. Yeah. It was such a good time because you really get to understand the mind of a teenager and how they're thinking, and they teach you patience because you cannot enforce what you believe in and they don't believe in. Building trust is key. So I'm just going to bust some few myths about type 1 diabetes and food, and these are things you've heard out there. People with type 1 diabetes can't eat sugar, and this is also common to people with diabetes generally at all not to eat sugar. And the fiber also has sugar. Yeah. Diabetes means boring meals. Especially they used to tell me, "Ah, nyinyi mnatuambia tu tukule hizi machakula zenye ni moja moja, mimi zinanichokesha." But if you work with a nutritionist, they're able to come up with a meal plan that will be able to be flexible, versatile variety so that you can be able to enjoy your food. Another thing is carbs must be avoided completely. This is false. Nutrition only matters for the person with type 1. No, if you've been following this session, I have been saying involve the whole family because nutrition is just not only for people with lifestyle diseases. Hiyo ndio notion ya kitambo ya nutritionist are watu ni wenye wana manage diabetes. Like, no, even healthy people need nutrition so that we can move from the preventative, we can foster the preventative and holistic care when it comes to nutrition. So, in reality, balance, variety, and inclusion work best. Yeah. So, just take away from this whole session, type 1 requires family centered support. Not necessarily that, you can also find support groups for moms or caregivers who are taking care of them so that you can be able to feel supported. Nutrition is about balance and not restriction. For me at Charity Safe Haven, I don't condone dieting. I don't encourage restriction. I want you guys to have a positive relationship with food. And most of the time, families shape our food habits. For me, some food I can't eat because I never grew up eating them, and me as an adult eating them is quite difficult. Emotional support reduces stress and stigma. Very, very important. When a child living with type 1 or a teenager or a young adult feel like they're being supported, they'll be less stressful and they will see you have accepted them as they are and there's no stigma, which is very, very, very good. That's why the diabetic desk is here to create awareness and debunk some of these myths. Together, families can make type 1 diabetes easy. For real. And this is from the data I collected. Those people who had a very huge support system really had good control over their sugar. So it's very, very important if you're here and you're offering education, you're counseling them, please ensure you include the caregivers and the family so that they can make management and support easier. So just encouragement to anyone living with type 1 diabetes, managing someone with type 1 diabetes, supporting someone with type 1 diabetes. Just know it's a journey and it's not a limitation. They can still lead a healthy life. Yeah. Every supportive meal you offer as a caregiver, it builds the confidence in the child, in the teenager, in the young adult, and family usually turn these challenges into strength. When you work together, you can overcome anything. And those small daily choices, those small consistent changes matter more than perfection. You know, sometimes you might want everything to be perfect, but that's not how life is. And just the major takeaway from all this is hope, care, and togetherness make the biggest difference when it comes to managing type 1, even type 2, anyone living with a chronic long life condition. Hope, care, and togetherness really give them that boost they need to fight and fight and fight until they can make it. Yeah. So thank you so much for being part of this session. Follow the Diabetic Desk. I release content every Friday on my LinkedIn, on my social media platform. I talk about diabetes. I'm very passionate about it. So reach out, my DMs, my numbers. I will leave them in the chat box. Reach out, ask questions, call, discovery call, 30 minutes. It's free. WhatsApp me. I'll be able to respond if you want to talk more, if you want to know more. Reach out and offer your feedback. I would really appreciate it. So stay tuned. For any upcoming webinars on the diabetic desk, I will share, or just me talking because I'm very versatile in diabetic education. And I feel like together, let's build awareness and support around diabetes. This has been a fun session. I know it's pre-recorded. I hope it will be able to help someone dealing with type 1 or managing someone with type 1. And let's continue this conversation. I try to make it as simple as possible so that everyone who comes across this link will be able to understand why it's very, very important to support people living with diabetes. So until next time, bye.